Well, good morning guys, it's Theo Stock here for Yachting Monthly, and today I've got the privilege of being in Sweden, where I've come to the east coast, just north of the Stockholm archipelago, to test the brand new Linjett 36. If you haven't heard of Linjett, don't worry, they don't build loads of boats, but the boats they do build are absolutely beautiful, and the 36 is an absolutely completely new model. The yard has been around rather a long time. It is the oldest working boatyard in Sweden. It's been around since 1886, and the Linjett brand has been around since the early 1970s. And in those 52 odd years, they've introduced only 10 new models. So to be aboard the brand new 36 as the 10th model in their 52-year history is really quite special. This is a proper Scandinavian cruising boat. She's quick, she's comfortable. I believe that she is going to be an absolute delight to sail. Right now we're motoring down the Björkefjärde. I think I've said that right. I've got Matty from the yard over here who's instructing me on my Swedish pronunciation. As of this moment, there is not a breath of wind. It is a stunningly beautiful morning, but we're going to struggle for sailing. So we're heading out towards open water and see if we can hopefully find a little bit of wind to see what the boat can do. While we're motoring out, we've got a little while until we get out to the sailing area. I thought I'd have a quick chat to Matty from Linjett. Matty Wilkon, thank you very much for coming with us, letting us come on your boat today.
Thank you yourself for coming.
Matty, what's your role at Linjett?
I'm responsible for the sales of the boats. So we sell all the boats directly from the factory.
Yeah.
So we want the customers to come to the shipyard and see the production, test the boats, and really get the experience of the boat.
Yeah. And you don't build loads of boats a year, do you? It's sort of 10 or 15, is that about right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So they're quite small numbers, so you have quite direct relationships with your customers, I'd imagine.
Yeah, every customer is very, very important, and we want them to be part of the Linjett family.
Yeah. And it was interesting at the yard where we just were, obviously lots of boats come back for service every winter, and you have about 200 Linjetts come back every year.
A lot of customers that live close by, even in Finland, they come to us to store their boats. But we even have collaborators, different yards in different places.
Yeah. Okay.
So in Scotland we have one also that we can do service with.
Now with the 36, you don't build lots of new models all of the time. Your models last about 10 or 15 years before you replace them.
Yeah.
Which boat is this one replacing?
It's actually replacing the Linjett 37, but it's filling a gap between the 39 and the 34. So customers that want a smaller package, but still the comfort of being a bigger boat.
Okay.
So bringing a lot of stuff or having a lot of equipment, that you have the possibility with this boat.
So just tell me about the concept of what's gone into the design of the 36.
The concept of this boat is that we want a small package. The form factor is smaller, but still it has the volume of a bigger boat. Mm-hmm. So when you go into the boat, you should have the feeling of this is a big boat that you can live in, but still a fast boat. So it's not too bulky, it's not too big.
Yeah.
So it's easy handling for a small crew.
Okay, so it's a fast cruiser. It's not necessarily a racing boat or a full-on performance boat, is it? But it's designed to sail really nicely.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a fast boat, but it's not optimized for some rule or something like that. It's optimized for the owner. Yeah.
And it's got so the underwater profiles, it's a little bit deeper, a little bit more forgiving if you fill it with equipment.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have more equipment on the boat and still have a fast boat. And also it handles waves and rougher conditions better.
Yeah, and in terms of the cockpit, just tell me a little bit about it's designed for short-handed sailing, all the lines are brought aft.
Yeah, so one thing that we have done is that the pedestal are tilted so you can both sit and be standing and seeing everything well. And you can sit quite a lot of people here, so you can have your loved ones sitting close by you.
Yeah, very important.
And you can do the control of it, and you can have the wheel behind between your legs.
Yeah, and then reach all of the lines.
Yeah, so everything is managed here, and it's meant for a lot of different trimming lines. So you have everything drawn back here to the cockpit.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll find some wind in a minute.
I hope so too.
And then we'll see what she's like to sail.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks Matty.
Thank yourselves.
Well, we're still motoring out towards open water, so I thought I'd use the time to show you around the cockpit and show you around on deck before we actually start sailing. First thing to mention is that Linjetts traditionally have a single wheel or a tiller. Some of the larger boats, the 43 and the 39, have now got these split twin wheels, and the 36 has gone along with that as well. They're relatively small composite wheels, so they're nice and light on the feel, and we've still got a large single deep rudder, so you still get the same feel on the wheel, but you've got this clear walk through and easy access to the water. You can close off the aft end of the cockpit if you want. That would be a sort of a stiff canvas reinforced screen across the back, as well as the guard wires there, so you can stop children walking out of the back of the boat or whatever. The pedestals themselves are really nicely organised, and they've done a good job of tilting the pedestals enough so that you can sit down and I can see the screen really clearly, as well as from standing up, as Matty said. And then I've got controls here for the retractable Sleipner bow thruster, as well as all the B&G kit that we've got on this boat with autopilot controls there. I've got buttons to control the bow anchor, and we've also on this boat, because we're in the Swedish archipelago, often you will anchor with your stern anchor and go bows to the rocks. So we've got a stern windlass here for the stern anchor there as well, and that's all controlled from the pedestal. Engine controls for the 40 horsepower Yanmar. I've got the throttle down here and the rev counter right in front of me, so that's all really easy. And then the ergonomics of sitting here, I can sit behind the helm, but there's also space to squeeze easily around the wheel. I can lean against the guard wires if I want once I'm helming, and I can brace against here. And then I've got all of my lines really easily to hand. I've got two 46 self-tailing Anderson winches, and the aft one is powered. You could have that one powered as well if you want to, but I'd imagine most owners will go for the powered option, because it just makes everything so easy. And we've got 10 jammers on either side with these organisers here, so you can actually take them off at different angles and still use them, rather than just winching them acrossways from the jammers, which isn't so good for them. And then under where I'm sitting is a really good deep and long rope bin, so you can do your coils and flake them out nicely and put them in there. There's absolutely loads of space for that, so that's been really well organised. And then there's loads of stowage on deck in this boat. We've got twin lazarettes under the helm seats. Lots of boats that have open transoms now miss out on some of this stowage that you can have. They have lazarettes below, but this goes all the way down to the bottom if you want it to. I've actually got a diesel tank under my feet here, and then the bottom of that locker is lined out. But they've really thoughtfully put in rails and different ways of organising the space, so you can keep all of your mooring lines and your spinnaker sheets really tidy in there. We've also got a cockpit table in there, which we'll set up in a little bit and we can have a look at. Underneath my feet there's another lazarette in here, so we'll open that one up. There's a lazarette in there, and then on port side we've got another one. There you can see the windlass for the anchor locker, for the aft anchor, sorry, and that's also where you find the gas locker. It's a really good big gas locker for a single large, big enough for a big Cala bottle. And there's a removable base, so if you want to put a bigger bottle in, you can take the base out and fit an even bigger bottle in. If you want a spare bottle, you'll probably need to put that up in the forepeak in there, but it is a really good big bottle, so you shouldn't have to replace it very often. Moving forwards in the cockpit, the forward end of the cockpit has been kept almost completely clear of lines, so your crew can come in here and just get completely out of the way. The spray hood comes a really nice long way back, and we've got these lovely big high coaming, so this is a very comfortable place to sit. We've got B&G instrument panels. This one's actually a Nemesis, so that's just a plain display with all my numbers on. And then this one is it is a standalone chart plotter, but it's repeating the chart from the card at the pedestal. And I've also got here, I've got autopilot controls there, so I can actually con the boat from here if I'm under engine or sailing, so I don't have to go out to the helms. So that's a really nice touch, that I can actually control the boat under the shelter here if it's not such a nice day. Really nice long companionway hatch with fairly gently sloping steps, 4 steps down, And then this is all toughened glass. That's weight supported by gas struts, and you can put that wherever you want it and it'll just stay. So you can keep it nice and cozy down below. A few little bits of teak around, but most of the decking is actually flexi teak, third generation flexi teak, which looks and feels lovely, and it means you're not chopping down Myanmar rainforests, which is always a positive. And then we've got another locker under the seat here, just on starboard side. So this is a full depth cockpit locker, and that is continuous with the lazarette on starboard side. Diesel tank is underneath there. And then you see I've got a rail here, and this is actually my hanging locker with access here from the heads on starboard aft side, so that you can use that for putting all of your wet kit in. And because you've got your diesel heater running in there, it warms the space up a bit as well, so it will help dry out any wet sailing kit you've got in there. But absolutely loads of space for putting things like your folding bikes and your dinghy and that kind of stuff. And nice to see a really good big hatch that you can fit large items through. There we go. Right, let's go up on deck. So up on the side decks, you can see we've got these nice wide clear side decks, good grab hold on the aft end of the spray hood there, makes it easy for moving around. And then we've got gates in the stanchions here. They've done a really nice long gate, so it's easy to get on and off. Quite nice to have a little grab hold here maybe, just as you're moving forwards. I'm sure that could be added in if you wanted it. But fairly quickly you're onto these stainless steel grab holds just in front of the spray hood. We've got a couple of dorade vents, mushroom vents there, so to ventilate above the heads and the galley on the other side. And you'll notice that we've got a coach roof mounted main sheet. This one it's a full width traveller, so it's a good compromise to have the main sheet out of the cockpit and keep the cockpit clear of the main sheet. That's obviously a nice safety consideration for cruising, while it still gives you a bit of control over sheeting positions and that kind of stuff. And the traveller lines are led after all the other winches, so you can actually winch the main sheet up and move it around a little bit. It's not exactly a racing setup where you'd have it at the aft end of the boat, aft end of the boom, but it does get it out of the cockpit. You can see we've got a decent amount of solar capacity. 230 watt solar panels from Solara gives you 260 watts maximum input, and that all goes down into the lithium banks, and we'll have a look at how they charge. There's a couple of clever solutions down below as well. But moving forwards, you'll see that the coach roof has been kept pretty clear, thanks to all the halyards being led aft under the deck, and actually the jib sheets as well. You can see that there aren't any lifting panels. A lot of boats have lifting panels so that you can access deck organisers and remouse lines if you need to. This boat doesn't need that, because each halyard and line going aft goes through its own individual stainless steel tube that starts here and ends right at the aft end. So if you did lose a line, you can just push a rope straight back through it, not a problem at all. And every winter the yard here takes all of the lines out of all of the boats, so they're not sitting in water or getting weathered. So that's a really robust solution that I think is actually really neat. We've got short jib car tracks just to adjust it a little bit if you're changing the sheeting angle. Obviously if you're reefing the sail down significantly, you can't move the car a very long way forwards. But I'm sure you could put a longer track on. There is also an option, we've got 106% overlapping genoa on this boat. If you wanted a big genoa, some customers opt for the 140% overlapping genoa instead of having a code 0. One of the reasons for that is that if you're going to race, it's one fewer sails to rate for, so it's better for your rating. But it also gives you really good drive upwind, and it's a really nice big sail. It's obviously a little bit harder to tack and things. There is an option to have a self-tacking jib, and then a track would go across in front of the mast here, or you can actually use your 106% genoa, just furl it down a little bit, and then it'll work as a self-tacking jib, and it's designed to do that. You'll notice, unusually for a modern boat, that the shrouds, both the lowers and the uppers, come down to this inboard chain plate position. So below decks there's a tie rod that links the chain plates here down into the structure of the boat and the hull frames. And one of the reasons for that is for that big overlapping genoa, and it also leaves the walk-through really nice and clear here, rather than having to duck underneath the lowers. So that's one of the reasons they've done it. As I'm coming forward, just to point out that a lot of the Linjetts before had aluminium tow rails. Now we've got moulded bulwarks, as is the sort of the common trend. And I think that looks really neat. And with this flexi-teak on the deck, it feels pretty secure for moving around. There aren't many reasons that you would need to come forwards whilst underway on this boat. It's equipped with a top-down furling Jenica, so asymmetric spinnaker, as well as a Code Zero. So that's all handled from aft. You could probably ask for grab rails forwards on the coach roof here if you really wanted to, but in reality I don't think you're going to be coming forwards very much at all. Up on deck you've got nice grip moulding here that is actually really grippy. We've got this nice clean flush hatch set into the coach roof there, a really low sleek looking coach roof, so it's quite elegant, it's nice to look at. You haven't got any big boxy superstructure. And the top sides mean that there is sufficient head height. It's not really tall inside, but we've got about 190 centimetres of headroom in the saloon, so that's absolutely fine for most people, not everybody, but for most people. You can also have a traditional asymmetrical spinnaker, and the mast is equipped with a track for the spinnaker pole there. We haven't got a spinnaker pole on board today, so we'll be using the furling asymmetric sails. Up at the bow then, you can see you've got quite a nice beamy wide bow. This is a lot narrower than some of the modern very high volume boats, and the bow is significantly finer than on those boats. We haven't got any dramatic hull chines or anything like that, but we've still got a decent amount of working space, and we've got this lovely big forepeak under my feet here. So they've introduced this as a sail locker, and given that we're only on a 36 footer, I think this is actually a fantastic amount of space in there. So you can see inside we've got 6 fenders in there, loads of space. We've got the Code Zero packed away there, removable bow ladder, and that plugs into the side of the bowsprit, which I'll show you shortly. Ahead of the forepeak then we've got the windlass with a vertical drum rather than a horizontal drum, so you get plenty of grip on the gypsy there, and a really nice big drop underneath there. You can see this lovely stainless steel chain coming down, and there's a baffle at the forward end of that locker that keeps that all completely out of the way. They've actually put 60 metres of chain on this boat, so that's absolutely loads. A lot of cruising boats will have 30 or 40 metres of chain, so 60 is plenty, and there is actually space. You could probably get at least 80 metres of chain in there, albeit that would be quite a lot of weight up forwards. And you've also got a really good big hatch to access that, so getting the sails in and out isn't a problem at all. And then forward of that, you can see that we've got the bow roller is semi-integrated into the bowsprit. By that I mean that the chain sits on top of the bowsprit and the bow roller goes down through the bowsprit. And they've made it nice and wide so that it's big enough to step on and walk across. And as you're often boarding a boat over the bow, particularly in the Baltic, it's really important that that's quite secure to do. And then with an open pulpit, that gives you plenty of walk-through space. The way they've done the moulding for the bowsprit also means we've got space for an electric furler for your Code Zero. You can have a manual furler if you prefer, that's an optional extra. But it does mean that you can control it at the push of a button from the cockpit. It also means that for the Jenica on this boat, we've got a top-down furling Jenica, so you can rig that up. That's a nice tight furl. Rig that up before you leave harbour, and then at the push of a button you can unfurl your spinnaker and off you go. But that means no one's got to come up to the foredeck and wrestle with a cruising chute snuffer or anything like that. So everything's done from the cockpit and keeps it really secure. And then the only other thing to mention is we've got below deck furling for the head sail, and we've got these really nice, good, big, solid deck cleats. So you've got midships cleats as well. So all of the deck gear on board this boat is really good and solid. It's a proper cruising boat that's really well built, as well as hopefully a boat that's going to sail nicely. Well, we've made it all the way out now, and 40 miles behind me is the start of Finland, Ireland, and the wind still hasn't filled in just yet, so we're going to drop the hook and have a little bit of lunch. I can do all of that here from the helm. So turn that on and away we go. So we've been out here for a little while. We had to wait a fair while for any wind to appear, and now we've got the heady heights of, let's see, 3.5 knots of true wind speed. But we are slipping along very nicely, I have to say. It is pretty flat water, mirror calm almost, but we're still sailing along at about 3.5 knots in about 3.5 knots of wind. And more or less most of the time today that there has been any wind at all, we've been more or less matching the wind speed, which for a boat of over 6 tons is pretty good. So she's light, but she's not ridiculously light. Yeah, and we're sailing along very nicely, 3.3 knots, and at the moment we're 32 degrees to the apparent wind, which is a pretty good pointing angle, with a bit more breeze to keep the wind, the airflow attached to the sails. We'd easily get up inside 30 degrees, probably 25 to 30 degrees, something like that. But as it is at the moment, we're just trying to keep the boat moving and ghosting along. We've had a Jenica up as well, and we did some lovely sailing, weaving in amongst the rocks and the islands, almost touching distance to the rocks, which is one of the exciting things about sailing in Sweden for anyone who's not used to it. Definitely wouldn't be getting that close to rocks in the UK and having to work out tidal heights and all of that. In terms of my impressions of the boat, it's hard to say how she sails when there is wind because I haven't had a chance to do that, and I'm hoping that tomorrow there will be a little bit more wind and we can have another sail on her. Oh, there we go. We are back in harbour at last. As you can see, it's pretty much dark outside now. Came back in with the last of the light. And it is lovely to get back into the warm down below here. The heating's been on today, but it's got really quite brisk out there. I think the temperature's about 5 degrees now, something like that. So it's not snowy yet, but it's definitely getting chilly. So it's lovely to be able to come in and get warm. So I'm just going to get my sailing kit off. I'm going to close the hatch and then I'll give you guys a tour around the boat. Well, you come down below and it is just lovely. Not just because of the temperature, but this is just a really nice space to come into. I've still got my sailing shoes on, but that's okay because we've got these nice floor mats, so they make sure that everything's clean and dry when you come down below. And this is actually going to be extended a little bit further to take you out towards the chart table here on starboard side. But when you come down, you come into this huge galley area, chart table just there and heads there. So everything that you need while you're out and about on the water are right to hand. And you've got plenty of space to put your wet weather gear in there. Make yourself a cup of tea. Check your nav over here if you still do paper navigation. Do whatever you need before you then move into the dry areas on the boat. Let's start with the galley then, and then we'll have a look around maybe the saloon and the heads, and then I'll show you the cabins as well. This boat is fitted out in Kaya mahogany. Oak is an option if you want something a little bit lighter. But it's been really nicely built. So just to start with the joinery a little bit, all of the framing around here is solid timber. It's not just veneered, that is solid Kaya. So it's a really robust fit out, and it should last the test of time. The locker doors themselves, they're a sort of a lightweight panel. It's not a plywood, but it's not a foam, so it's just a sort of a lightweight marine board. But then they've put good thick veneers on it, so all of the edges should stand up to knocks and scrapes reasonably well. We've got these 3 nice big lockers over here, and compared to the 37 that this boat has replaced, they've increased the size of the lockers. Obviously we've got higher freeboard, so all of this comes up a bit higher. Headroom is higher. I've got 190 centimetres here at the bottom of the companionway, and that stays more or less the same to the front of the saloon, and then it drops off a little bit in the forward cabin there. But here I've got plenty of headspace. The galley itself got these lovely Korean worktops, got a huge top opening fridge with 2 compartments. We've got a beer in there for us for later, which I'm looking forward to a lot. A nice big double sink here, so they've put in nice deep sinks so that when you wash up and dry up and everything's really secure and water's not going to slosh out while you're underway. 2 separate taps. I think one of these does seawater as well. And you've got hot and cold pressurised running water, of course, and loads of stowage as well. So there's a bin in the end here. We've got a good stack of drawers next to the galley. And one of the little things you'll notice, the drawers are actually made out of solid oak with this nice dovetail joints down the side. So no MDF there, that's all proper joinery. Beautifully built in-house in the boatyard, which is just there. Well, no, just behind me actually, just up there. Also these sliding cupboards in here. There are no dividers in here at the moment, but I'd imagine that you could easily put in some dividers or bottle holders to hold oil or bottles of wine or whatever it is that you want to keep in there. And if you want your Nespresso machine, they will fit one for you at the aft end of this locker, and then that will slide out and you can have your Nespresso underway. On this boat, we've got a 2-burner gas hob. I think this is an ENO oven. So you've got a decent oven and grill, as well as the 2 top burners and pan cupboards underneath. Some of these boats have been built with induction, and I'll come on to the electrics in a little bit, but there's plenty of battery capacity and you can opt for more. And there's some clever charging stuff going on inside the engine compartment as well, which I'll show you. But that means you've got plenty of power for induction cooking. That means you can do away with the gas on board, which is a positive as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, and then also stowage under the sink. Anyway, loads and loads of space. You could live on here very comfortably, plenty of space to keep food and host and cater while you're underway. Let's have a quick look at the chart table then. On this boat, there is a second fridge underneath the chart table. It's a standing chart table, and that's got a little freezer compartment in it as well. You can just have lockers there if you prefer. And for me personally, I'd quite like a sit-down chart table, even if you're not going to do paper navigation. I think it's nice to sit and work at a laptop or have a bit of space that's sort of separate to whatever people are doing in the saloon. If you wanted that, they will move this chart table forwards. It will overhang this berth settee on this side. You can still keep this as a 190 centimetre long sea berth, and then they'll put a forward-facing seat just ahead of the heads compartment here. So then you'd sit looking forwards like that. I think if it were my boat, I'd opt for that. But if you're not fussed about that, then this is a really efficient use of space, and you get an extra fridge. If you want another fridge freezer, they will put one effectively in the cockpit locker, and they'll use some of the space in there so that you can have a freezer there. Not quite such ready access, but actually if it's your third cold storage on board, then you probably don't need 3 ready-use fridges and freezers. And then inside, you've got space in here for, it's actually quite a big stowage space, so you could fit an Admiralty leisure folio in there. And the table would be big enough to put your leisure folio on there. But in the Baltic, very often navigation, if you still use paper, is done with these A3 binder folders of charts rather than separate sheets of charts. Electrics are all done really neatly. We've got these 12-volt distribution panels. We've also got a Victron energy panel here, and that shows you the state of your battery, inverter, solar input, shore power, alternator, all that kind of stuff comes to there. And then I've got a VHF radio and a stereo as well. Again, if this were my boat, I would have at least an instrument repeater down here, if not one of those, a little chart plotter repeater down here, just so that I could do some of the nav planning and keep an eye on things when I'm down below, because right now if I'm going out and I need to do nav planning, I don't want to go back up on deck because it is freezing. Inside here you can see the quality of the fit out has all been really neatly done. Electrical distribution, all of the main black box systems really easily to hand. So that is very neat and easy to access everything that you need to. Turn that one off. Let's have a look in the saloon then. So it's worth mentioning that this boat is the prototype. The company have built it as their demo boat, and they wanted to have built a hull and worked out any possible teething problems with the new design before they start selling it to customers. So customers will come for a test sail on this boat, but there are a few little bits and bobs that they're still working out. One of those things is with the saloon table. So the saloon table at the moment has got one central locker in it there. They're actually going to move this one forwards for your bottle stowage there, and they'll build in some drawer stowage at the aft end of the table just to make slightly better use of the space there. Other than that, you've got these lifting leaves that come up and they lock off as well. So then you can get probably 6 people comfortably around the table here. Realistically, you can have maybe a couple if you own it as a couple, and then you've got one other cabin, and there's only a 2 cabin layout for this boat. You're going to stick them in the aft cabin and you'll be in the forward cabin probably, and you might have a couple of others. You could have people sleeping on these berths if you've got a boat full, and then you've got space for them to sit around the tables. One thing I didn't mention about the galley is we've got a glass splashback, but this is proper toughened glass, and the actual sheet of glass comes down to about here inside the cabinet, and that means that if you lean on it or fall against it while you're at sea, it's not going to break, and that is actually really solid, and you can use that as a handhold. And then around the Korean worktop, they've actually put a recess in there, which makes that a really effective handhold. Underneath me, I've got the water tank. There are 2 water tanks on board. One is under the port settee. The other one is under the floor midships, just sort of next to the galley. That keeps the weight nice and low down. There's 300 litres of water tankage on board, 150 litres of diesel. That's in the aft cockpit locker that I've already shown you. And then outboard, you see some of the nice finishing touches that we've got. So a wide shelf area, I guess you could put fiddles on there. There's no fiddles on the back of that at the moment. I'd quite want fiddles so that anything that you put on there doesn't end up down the back of the sofa. But you can see that the tie rods here, this links the chain plates into the structure of the boat and the hull, and the hull frames that they've put in. And then obviously more locker space over here as well, so bookshelving and that kind of thing. It's worth saying these boats aren't custom built, they are built to a set design, but if you were a potential owner and you had a particular set of wishes, the yard will work very hard to make sure that you get the boat of your dreams that fits within the basic concept of the boat, but they can make tweaks, and all of this joinery is hand built by craftsmen right here, so they can make all of those changes and tweaks to make this the boat that you want, exactly that you want. Other little nice finishing touches, so all of the woodwork's quite traditional, but then we've got white vinyl stitched hull lining there. It's all really nicely insulated. We've got some steel with a leather grip over it, and then these quite nice sort of minimalist finishings around the windows. All of the windows are toughened glass. These are double toughened glass in the hull sides. So it's all built to a really high standard, and all the fixtures and fittings, like the little lamps up here, USB chargers in the bottom of them, they're all proper, nice, good quality kit that is going to stand the test of time. Under the starboard settee where you are at the moment, we've got the battery bank. The engine start battery is in the engine compartment, but the lithium house battery bank is under here. Standard is 200 amp hours, but you can upgrade that to either 400 or 600 amp hours. If you're going to have induction cooking, you'd probably want the maximum of that. And then they've got a high output alternator in the engine bay, which I'll show you shortly. But before we do that, let's have a look forwards, and then we'll work our way aft and have a look at the heads and the aft cabin and the engine compartment. So in the forward cabin, obviously the coach roof comes down a little bit lower, which gives the boat its nice sleek look. 185 centimetres at the aft end of the cabin, and I've still got 185 centimetres here thanks to the extra head height from the hatch. But if you're taller than that, then you're going to end up stooping a little bit, or if you close the blind, it'll take sort of another 5 centimetres off your head height there. But once you're in, it is a really comfy space. As you can see, we've got a full width V berth here. There is an infill to go in this to turn these two sort of semi-singles into a proper double. 210 centimetres long, 210 centimetres wide. So you've got plenty of space to get away from your partner if they snore as well, and you're not going to end up kicking each other because it's good and wide at the foot end too. You can see a little bit of the boxing here that gives some of the space to that nice big four-peak locker there. But they've done a really good job of including loads of other stowage as well. On starboard side next to you, you've got a full height hanging locker. On port side, you've got a nice little tabletop, shelved lockers, outboard, drawer below, and then underneath my feet here, there's a little step up and another drawer under there. And again, it's built in solid oak with proper tongue and groove, so everything has been properly done. While we're looking down, actually, I'll just point out that the deck in this boat, you can have whatever you want, but this is a walnut finish. And all of the floorboards have got anti-squeak edging around them to stop dirt and stuff getting in and causing noises. And then there are a few lifting panels as well, and I'll show you those in a second. Above me, behind me, we've got overhead stowage as well. So there's loads of room to put all of your stuff. So you can live in here comfortably for a long cruise without worrying too much about space. And then under the bunk here, this is worth pointing out, we've got bin stowage at the aft end of that, and at the forward end of the bunk you can see in here that there is a retractable bow thruster. That's the Sleipner retractable bow thruster. Whether you actually want that or not, we didn't need that getting in and out today, and a 36-foot boat with a single rudder arguably doesn't necessarily have to have one, but I'd imagine a lot of people will want one because it's really nice to have. And it doesn't detract from sailing performance because you haven't got your permanent tunnel there. They will add in some boxing around this so that then you can use the other spaces for sort of longer term stowage as well, because there's plenty of space under this. But it's nice that there's no water tanks up here because you don't want loads of weight in the bow. So that weight has been kept aft and low down. But that is a very comfortable space. One thing I did want to point out to you was that rather than having a hinged door that then obstructs the cabin in some way, they've actually made this pocket door, which I think is really very neat. Undo the catch, slide it across, and it closes. See you later. Right, come with me into the heads. Well, here we go. We've got a lovely heads compartment in here. You can see that it's really long. And at the forward end is a shower compartment with a wooden seat, and there's a shower screen that folds across as well, which I'll show you. Electric flushing toilet on this one, so you can, there we go, sort all of that out. The mirror has been really neatly done. You can see that we've got it's backlit, so you've got nice illumination there, but they've also put in little support struts so that you can tip it up, so that when you're standing up, you can still see yourself in the mirror, and that will support itself. So you don't have to bend right down to have a look in the mirror. Locker space outboard, locker space below, plenty of stowage, good access to your seacocks down there, which is what you want. So that's your sink seacock in there, and a couple of other bits and bobs. The holding tank is actually outboard and up here in the cockpit locker, so that's completely out of the way. And then at the aft end here, this is just worth pointing out, open up that locker and that takes you into the cockpit locker where you've got the diesel heating running, which has actually kept this really nice and warm. All that stuff's nice and dry, but it means that you can use that as your wet hanging locker as well, or your waterproof stowage anyway. If you've got dripping wet stuff, you'd probably just hang it up in the shower compartment there, and then it all just drips and drains out. So, but that's a really usable space, and there is just one heads on this boat, but if there's only 4 of you on board, that's absolutely plenty. Right, let's have a look at the aft cabin. Aft cabin has a similar amount of headroom to the rest of the saloon, so 190 centimetres, and this is a huge bunk as well. This is 2 metres long in here and 160 centimetres wide. It's a really good big rectangular double. Plenty of ventilation. We've got 2 opening hatches here, hull windows here. I did point out the hull windows in the saloon as well, and you've got hull windows in the forward cabin, and they're at a good height so you can see out of them in bed. They've also made sure that when you're sitting in the saloon, as long as the doors are open, you can see out of lots of the other hull windows as well. So you've got really good sight lines, loads of nice views out of the windows in the coach roof and all that kind of stuff. And reasonable, good ventilation in here. Got 2 opening hatches in the saloon, but I'll point out a couple of other bits with the ventilation. And then this locker in here, I think we've got some stuff in there at the moment, but they're actually going to change how they do the door. So they're going to hinge it aft so that and make it slightly smaller, so it doesn't overlap with the door opening here, but it makes it a little bit easier to access when you're sitting exactly where I am. And then good deep bin stowage in there. So you've got your shoes and plenty of place to put sailing boots and that kind of stuff. So all of the main things that you need access to are there and ready. And then you've got more stowage underneath as well with more of these lovely drawers. And then you've got access to the sail drive and that kind of thing. And steering quadrants you actually get through through the lazarettes, but sail drive and the aft end of the engine you get to underneath this bunk. Let's have a quick look at the engine compartment then. Just open that. Nice to see that it locks down properly. That doesn't necessarily happen on all boats. Turn that the other way. There we go. So that is really well supported on gas struts. And it's good to see that it comes up well above the horizontal, so I can get in there without having to strain. And that is a support for the bottom step. Just make sure it's really well supported. I haven't got a light in here at the moment, but I'll give you a little bit more light so you can see. So in here we've got a Yanmar 3-cylinder 40 horsepower diesel. You can hear it a little bit, so the insulate, but actually it's pretty quiet, particularly when you're at sort of standard cruising revs, 2,100, 2,200, which will give you 7 knots of boat speed. We were thrashing it a little bit on the way back in, doing 8 knots at just under 3,000 revs, which is pretty close to max. And even so, it wasn't too loud at all. All of the main systems are nicely accessible. I've got seacocks down here, filters, header tanks, fuel filters, and that's my main water strainer. And this, I just want to point this out to you, this little shiny gubbins here, which is on the main vater intake, is actually the cooling for the alternator. It's a water-cooled alternator because it is a high output alternator that can put out 230 amps. And because it's water-cooled, a lot of high output alternators will put out a high amount of ampage for a short period until they reach their maximum temperature, and then they have to shut back on capacity. Because this is water-cooled, it can keep going at 230 amps indefinitely. And also, whether the engine is running at max revs or not, it will give you absolutely loads of charge, which makes things like induction cooking possible, because you can run your engine for half an hour and have the batteries more or less full again. If you've got your 7 kilowatt battery bank of the 3 200 amp hour batteries, this boat runs on 12 volts. So I think I've got my maths right on those numbers. But anyway, everything's pretty easily accessible where it should be, and it's a nice installation. So big tick on that. And it's a sail drive transmission, so fairly standard on that. And then last thing that I want to do is just show you the construction of the boat. So we're going to move and have a look under the floor there. Right, so this boat is built in vinyl ester resin. The hull is vacuum infused, and they infuse the whole lot in one shot so that it is structurally really sound. It's as light as possible, and it's a really thorough infusion to make sure that there are no dry patches in the fiberglass. The deck is hand laminated, and the reason for that is they wanted a really high gloss finish, and if you vacuum infuse, then you can get a little bit of a read through of the fiberglass through into the gel coat, and they didn't want any texture on that at all, so they've done that for the quality of the finish rather than sort of on just maximum efficiency. In terms of the structure of the boat, let's have a look in the bilges. You can see here, this is a really good demonstration of the fact that the boat's got a slightly deeper hull than a lot of boats do these days, and they've also built it with a nice deep bilge sump so that the keel bolts onto a stub, rather than going onto the flat bottom of the hull, which is much stronger because you've then got compound curves. The other thing that they've done to make this keel really strong is that if you attach a keel onto the bottom of a boat in a straight line, it's a little bit like a hinge mechanically, so that if you hit a rock very hard, it could sort of shear along that hinge. So what they've done is the sump in here is actually stepped at 3 stages, so the keel effectively attaches at 3 levels, which stops that hinge effect happening. So it just makes it a much more secure attachment of the keel onto the hull. So I thought that was worth pointing out. And then all of the hull frames are laminated into the boat, so they're glued in, and then you can see in here all of this lamination, really good thick laminations all around the hull frames. So there's absolutely no way that hull frame is coming detached from the skin of the hull. Below the waterline, it's also worth saying that we've got solid laminate. There's no Divinycell core under the waterline, and then in the top sides it's Divinycell core, which makes it stiff and light without too much weight. Well, we've been out sailing for a second day on the Linjett 36 because we've had a little bit more breeze today, little being the operative word. We've had maybe 6 to 8 knots of true wind with the occasional gust of 10 knots, so it's hardly been blowing old boots, but still enough to get the boat moving. Upwind, she has slipped along absolutely beautifully. In 6 to 8 knots of true wind, that's given us about at times as much as 13 to 14 knots across the deck, at which time she was sailing very happily at 6 to 6.5 knots upwind, and that's somewhere between 25 to 30, so normally 27, 28 degrees to the apparent wind, and inside 40 degrees, so mostly around 35 to 40 degrees to the true wind, which is really close to the wind, especially when you think about the fact that this is a slightly beamier boat than Linjett have built before, and beam normally translates into making a boat point slightly less well. So the fact they've got such a weatherly boat with the volume that they've added into this boat, I think is absolutely brilliant. On the helm right now we're just cruising along at sort of 5 or 6 knots on a close reach. So there's not loads of feel on the helm, but obviously as we come onto the wind and the boat loads up a bit, she then gets a lot more responsive, and you get this lovely feedback without the wheel ever really getting heavy. I haven't got to the point of sort of exploring how much grip she's got, but there's absolutely no indication that she would struggle with grip in any way. Like other Linjetts, because you've got a slightly deeper rounder hull, she'll heel a little bit sooner than a big flat boat, but this boat is beamier than the Linjett 34 we've tested. Nevertheless, probably 20, 22, 25 degrees of heel is her sort of happy place when she's fully powered up in a decent breeze, which is maybe 5 degrees more than a slightly beamier, flatter boat, as I said. But still, it's very comfortable on board. There's loads of hand grips for moving around down below when we're heeling, and the cockpit feels really secure, and the coamings are nice and comfy for leaning against when the boat's heeling. So, having actually got the boat heeling, I mean, we only had about 15 degrees of heel today because there's not loads of breeze, but nevertheless, this is a boat that is really comfortable underway and really comfortable to sail, and loads of different seating positions and standing positions around the helm as well. So this is a boat that, from what I've seen at least today, she works absolutely beautifully under sail. Well, there we have it. That was the test of the Linjett 37. I hope you've enjoyed coming aboard with me as much as I've enjoyed sailing this boat. It's been an amazing journey coming out to what felt like the wilds of Sweden, out in the forests here. I know we're only an hour and a half north east of Stockholm, but it's been great coming to see where these boats are built and into this little boatyard where they have been building boats the same way for over 130 years. And as one of the oldest boatyards in Sweden, it's clear that they've got a huge amount of tradition and heritage that they're very proud of. And with the Linjett brand now over 50 years, and this being the 10th model, this is clearly not fast fashion when it comes to boat building. That said, this is a really modern boat, not necessarily purely in hull form because they've gone for relatively conservative lines. She's a little bit beamier and a little bit higher and a bit more volume than some of the older Linjett, but she's got a beamier stern, no hard hull chines anywhere. But in the boat and on the boat, the sail handling systems, the electric winches, the power, the navigation, the electronics, heating, all of the sort of the creature comforts and all of the modern systems make this a really modern, efficient and interesting boat. There's loads of little design touches where they've thought really hard about how they want the boat to work and making it a comfortable boat to live on board and an effective boat to sail. We've had some really good wind finally today, not as much as we'd have liked, but we have had enough breeze to get the boat up to speed a little bit and just to show that she really is very weatherly and slips along very nicely indeed. In terms of what she's built for, clearly you could sail her to the Med, but that's not necessarily her intended habitat. She's much more suited to the Northern Europe, the Baltic, UK, Channel, France, Scotland, all of that kind of stuff, and you could go much further afield if you wanted to. If you're looking at this kind of boat, you're going to be looking at about double the price of what you would pay for a similarly sized production cruiser, but you're not far off the ballpark of things like Hallberg-Rassy, Sara, Arkona, Forby, that kind of properly crafted Scandinavian cruiser. In terms of price for a Linjett 36, you're looking at about £387,000 sterling, excluding VAT. That's base price. By the time you've spec'd it up exactly as we've tested on board this boat and paid your VAT in the UK, you're looking at about £585,000 sterling. That's clearly a fair bit to pay for a boat, but you do get this absolutely stunning craftsmanship all the way down to the fact that the drawers have got little dovetail joints and all of those little bits that mean that this is a boat that will really stand the test of time. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that so many Linjett owners bring their boats back to the yard every year, which suggests that Linjett's sort of almost like keeping their flock close, keeping it to themselves a little bit. And I can see why they would, because what they've got is really valuable. And I think there's a chance that when it comes to boat building, Linjett might just be one of Sweden's best kept secrets.